He thought you were replaceable. He thought you'd come running back, like you always did. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, he believed that the silence was temporary, that your absence was just another phase. But what he never understood, what he failed to realize, until it was too late, is that the silence wasn't a pause. It was the end. See, when a woman finally stops talking, she's not trying to win. She's already done playing. When she no longer asks where you are, when she no longer reacts, no longer argues, no longer explains, that's not indifference, that's exhaustion. That's her soul folding into itself, protecting what's left of her peace. You might think it was cold, the way she vanished. You might call her heartless, distant, even dramatic. But deep down, you know none of those things are true. Because what you lost wasn't just a woman. You lost a sanctuary. You lost the one person who saw your darkness and still tried to meet you there. You lost someone who gave you softness in a world that demands hardness. You lost someone who would have stood beside you, not behind you. But you didn't recognize her value until she was gone. You see, most men don't realize the gravity of what they had until silence takes its place. It's in the quiet that regret grows loud. It's in her absence that your reality begins to unravel. Not because she cursed you, not because she blocked your number, but because she didn't have to. The most powerful departure is the one that comes without explanation. The one that doesn't scream or slam doors. It simply leaves, carrying the dignity of every tear that went unnoticed, every unspoken boundary that was crossed, every moment she chose you when you didn't choose her back. And now you sit with that silence. You check the phone she no longer texts. You scroll through the photos she no longer updates. You look at the door hoping she'll walk in like nothing happened. But she won't. Because what you didn't know was that her leaving wasn't spontaneous. It was stitched together over time, thread by thread, each one made from moments you thought didn't matter. And one day, without warning, those threads formed wings. Now she flies. And you? You're just starting to realize you let go of the kind of woman most men pray for and never find. The kind who won't wait forever. The kind who chooses herself. The kind who disappears when she realizes her love became a gift you stopped opening. There's a specific moment, quiet, nearly invisible, when a man realizes he made a mistake. It's not always dramatic. It doesn't always come with a breakdown or an apology. Sometimes it's as subtle as seeing your name and feeling a knot in his chest, one that wasn't there before. Sometimes it's hearing your favorite song and not being able to enjoy it anymore. Sometimes it's walking past someone who looks nothing like you, but still reminds him of what he lost. The truth is, regret doesn't announce itself. It just sits there, heavy, growing louder in silence. And that regret always begins with a pattern. The loss of a woman who carried a specific kind of presence. Not just beauty. Not just charm, but something rarer, something deeper. A woman who possessed the kind of traits that, at the time, seemed inconvenient, even difficult, but in hindsight revealed themselves to be irreplaceable. Men don't usually regret losing the woman who made everything easy. They don't spend years haunted by someone who never challenged them, never stood firm, never forced them to see themselves clearly. No. The woman they regret losing is the one who carried depth, who held her own energy like a flame, who didn't just fit into their world but expanded it. She wasn't perfect, and she never pretended to be, but she had something real, and real stays with you even after it's gone. This is the woman who could sit in silence and make you feel heard. The one whose absence isn't just noticed, it echoes, because she didn't ask to be chosen. She chose herself long before anyone else did. And while he thought she'd stay because she always did before this time, she didn't. What makes a woman unforgettable? It's not what she wore. It's not how loudly she loved. It's what she didn't tolerate. It's how she knew when to stop pouring into a cup that had no intention of being filled in return. It's how she walked away not to punish, but to protect herself. And it's in the wake of that walk away that the real regret begins. Because when a man loses a woman who has emotional sovereignty, who carries a quiet but magnetic strength, and who no longer waits for anyone's validation, he doesn't just lose a person, he loses access. He loses the mirror that reflected who he could have become if he had stepped up. He loses the one person who might have stayed forever, had she only been met halfway. This isn't about bitterness, it's about recognition. Not all women are remembered. Not all departures leave a mark. But few women remain embedded in memory. Not because they were flawless, but because they were whole. And wholeness, once touched, is hard to forget. The pain of losing her doesn't come all at once. It creeps in slowly, often when he thinks he's moved on, when he's with someone new, when he thinks he's found better, until he realizes better doesn't mean deeper, that louder doesn't mean wiser, that more compliant doesn't mean more compatible. And that's when it hits him. He didn't just lose her. He lost the version of himself that only existed with her. The calm, the clarity, the feeling of being seen, not just watched. This video isn't about blame. It's not about revenge. It's not even about him. It's about you, the woman watching this, who's wondering if walking away was the right choice. If your silence spoke loud enough. If your absence meant anything. And I'm here to tell you, yes, it did. It still does. Because the kind of woman who embodies what we're about to talk about, these 3 traits, doesn't just disappear. She leaves a space no one else can fill. And whether he says it or not, whether he shows it or not, he feels it. He will regret losing you if you have these 3 traits. Not because you made him, but because you became too whole to be forgotten. Now let's talk about what those traits are and why they matter more than anything he thought he wanted. Trait number 1, emotional sovereignty. It is not taught in school. It is rarely modeled in relationships, but it is the most powerful force a woman can carry. Emotional sovereignty means you no longer allow your well-being to be dictated by someone else's actions, moods, or absence. It means you feel deeply, but you don't collapse. You care, but you don't chase. You notice the shift, but you don't beg for clarity. You know how to sit with your feelings without needing to make someone else responsible for them. This is the trait that unsettles men the most. Not because you become cold, not because you don't love, but because your love is no longer performative. It is no longer transactional. You've stopped outsourcing your worth to someone else's affection, and that shift is revolutionary. When a woman reaches emotional sovereignty, everything changes. Her reactions soften into responses. Her need for control dissolves into clarity. She stops trying to fix broken things. She stops trying to convince someone to see her. She stops shrinking to fit into places that cannot hold her truth. And this is where regret begins to take root. Because while many men are used to women who react, who cry, argue, plead, or chase, the sovereign woman does none of that. She withdraws with grace. She grieves without spectacle. She lets the silence do the speaking. And that silence is louder than any scream could ever be. That silence forces reflection. It creates space for regret to settle in. Not immediately, not dramatically, but inevitably. You see, emotional sovereignty is not detachment. It is discernment. It is the ability to feel pain without making it your identity. It is the discipline of not handing your emotional world to someone who has no intention of holding it gently. When he left, maybe he expected you to fall apart, to spiral, to send the long message, to beg for closure, to chase validation. But you didn't. You sat with the ache. You let it burn through you. You chose not to numb it with distractions or rebound fantasies. You chose to face the void instead of pretending it wasn't there. And in doing that, you changed the entire dynamic. Because when you hold your pain with maturity, with depth, with stillness, you don't become weak. You become rare. And rarity is unforgettable. It is in this strength that he begins to feel the loss. Not because you punished him. Not because you broadcast your healing online. But because you didn't need to. Because your energy simply disappeared, and with it, the access he took for granted. Because the next time he reached out, the warmth was gone. Not out of spite, but out of growth. A woman who has claimed her emotional world is a woman no one forgets. Because she is no longer moved by inconsistency. She is no longer shaken by silence. She no longer needs validation from a man who didn't know how to hold space for her heart when it was available. That doesn't mean she didn't love. In fact, it means she did, fully, fiercely, but she loved from fullness, not lack. And that's what makes her different. Her love wasn't rooted in need. It was rooted in choice. She stayed because she wanted to, not because she was afraid to be alone. And when the choice no longer served her peace, she walked away. Not because she stopped loving, but because she started honoring herself more. You see, most people confuse love with emotional enmeshment. They think to love is to merge, to lose yourself, to tolerate chaos in the name of connection. But real love, sovereign love, does not ask you to abandon yourself. It asks you to return to yourself. Again and again. Even when it hurts. So yes, he will regret losing you if you have this trait. Not because you were the loudest or the most reactive, but because you were steady, because you were grounded, because you could weather storms without sinking your own ship, because you knew how to hold yourself in your own arms when no one else showed up. And let me tell you something, when a man loses a woman like that, it doesn't hit him all at once. It hits him in moments, in subtle, slow waves. When he sees someone who reacts the way you never did, when he's met with chaos instead of calm, when he realizes that emotional safety is not something you can fake, it's something you feel. And what he felt with you, he might spend a lifetime searching for it in someone else's arms and never find it. Emotional sovereignty doesn't make you hard. It makes you holy. It makes you sacred. It makes your presence a privilege, not a given. And when that kind of presence disappears, the absence becomes a mirror. One he can't unsee. One that reflects everything he couldn't be when you were still within reach. So if you've ever doubted whether your stillness was noticed, whether your restraint mattered, whether your walkaway made any difference, remember this. The women who carry their emotions with dignity are the ones who leave the deepest impressions. Not because they tried to be remembered, but because they were too self-possessed to be erased. This is trait number 1. And it is the foundation, the core, the anchor. If you have emotional sovereignty, you don't need to scream for closure. Your silence is already saying everything. And that is exactly why he will regret losing you. Trait number 2. Magnetic silence. There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from apathy or fear. It doesn't stem from emotional shutdown or detachment. It comes from power, from depth, from knowing that not everything needs a response to be heard. Not every insult needs a defense. Not every departure needs a reaction. This kind of silence is not absence, it is presence intensified. And when a woman learns to embody it, her energy becomes unforgettable. Magnetic silence is different from avoidance. It's intentional. It's not about pretending something didn't hurt, it's about choosing not to let that hurt dictate your worth. It's about knowing your truth so deeply that you don't feel compelled to prove it. It's the kind of silence that holds the weight of everything you could have said, but didn't. Not because you were weak, but because you were already done. This silence lingers. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It simply exists. And in doing so, it unsettles. Because most people expect a reaction. They expect drama. They expect noise. But when all they're met with is your calm, your measured, unwavering calm, they don't know what to do with it. And that's when the regret begins to grow. You see, magnetic silence is not passive. It's not the absence of strength, it is strength restrained. It's the art of stepping back, not to disappear, but to preserve your energy. To say, I could speak, I could fight, I could explain, but I don't owe that to anyone who doesn't already understand. There's something haunting about a woman who goes quiet, especially one who used to care, used to try, used to fight for connection. When she falls silent, it means something shifted. It means the cost of explaining became greater than the benefit of being understood. And the man who once heard her laughter, her worries, her dreams, now hears nothing. And in that silence, he begins to remember. Because silence has a way of amplifying everything that used to be taken for granted. The way she checked in when no one else did. The way she stayed soft even when she was hurting. The way she filled a space without asking for permission. Now the space feels different. Now it echoes. and every echo sounds like the version of her he didn't protect. Most people don't notice what they had until it stops speaking, until the good morning texts stop coming, until the support vanishes, until the warmth is gone, and by then it's too late. Because the woman who walks away in silence is rarely coming back. She didn't leave with fireworks. She left with clarity. Her silence becomes magnetic because it forces him to face himself. No distractions. No conversations to twist or manipulate. No closure to negotiate. Just silence. The kind that turns into a mirror. The kind that reflects not just who he was in the relationship, but who he failed to become. There is a reason why ancient teachings speak of silence as sacred. Because it contains wisdom words can't hold. When you choose silence, you reclaim control. You stop explaining your pain to those who caused it. You stop auditioning for understanding. You stop trying to be heard by someone who was never really listening. And in that space, something powerful happens. He begins to listen not to you, but to his own mind. And in that space, he can no longer blame you. He can no longer distort the truth. Because your silence leaves nothing to argue with. Nothing to distort. Just the raw reality of his choices staring back at him. This kind of silence also creates contrast. The next woman may be louder. She may over-explain, overcompensate, overstay. But she won't feel like you. Because your presence wasn't about volume, it was about weight. And that weight doesn't leave quietly, even if you did. Magnetic silence also rewrites your relationship with yourself. It teaches you patience. It teaches you restraint. It shows you that not every emotion is meant to be externalized. That not every reaction is worthy of your energy. It's a maturity that isn't often celebrated, but always felt. It's the woman who no longer texts paragraphs trying to make someone see her heart. It's the woman who no longer fights to be chosen. It's the woman who knows that her energy speaks for itself, and that if someone doesn't feel the loss when she's gone, they were never truly connected in the first place. And make no mistake, he does feel the loss. Maybe not publicly, maybe not immediately, but in the moments he least expects. In the quiet of his own life. In the soft presence of someone new who doesn't hold the same depth. In the way no conversation feels quite as real. In the stillness that follows the chaos he thought he wanted. He will regret losing you if you've mastered this trait. Because silence is the most honest goodbye there is. It doesn't need punctuation. It doesn't need closure. It doesn't need forgiveness. It simply exists. And that existence will haunt him. Not because you tried to hurt him, but because you chose not to let him keep hurting you. Silence becomes magnetic when it comes from power, when it comes from peace, when it says, I don't need to explain why I left. I only needed to leave. And the truth is, most men aren't ready for that kind of silence. They are used to noise, to chaos, to the comfort of knowing they still have access. But when access is denied not with anger, not with cruelty, but with indifference, there is no defense against that. No recovery from that. So if you've been wondering whether your silence mattered, whether your quiet departure left a mark, know this. It did. It always does. Because magnetic silence doesn't fade. It lingers. It echoes. And it reminds him of everything he didn't value until it stopped asking to be valued. This is trait number 2. The art of saying everything without saying a word. The decision to let your absence speak in ways your presence never could. And the result is always the same. He will regret losing you. Because your silence didn't just end the relationship. It revealed the truth. Trait number 3. The power to choose. It seems so simple, so obvious. But for many women, this is the hardest truth to live. Not because they don't have the ability to choose, but because for too long, they've been conditioned to wait to be chosen, to be validated, to be invited in. The narrative is everywhere. Wait to be loved, wait to be picked, wait to be enough. But a woman who wakes up from that script, who stops waiting and starts choosing that woman, changes everything. She no longer sits on the sidelines, hoping someone will see her worth. She doesn't measure her value by how many calls she gets, how many compliments she receives, or how much attention she's given. She chooses herself first, And from that place, she becomes selective, not bitter, not closed off, but intentional. This trait is perhaps the most dangerous to a man who once took her for granted, because it shifts the dynamic completely. She is no longer trying to prove she is worthy of love. She knows she is. And now she's not asking, will he choose me? She's asking, does he deserve access to me? This is the moment everything changes. This is the moment he starts to feel regret in its rawest form. Not just because she's gone, but because he realizes she was never standing behind him, waiting. She was simply observing. And when she made the decision to walk away, it wasn't impulsive. It was final. A woman who understands the power of choice is no longer moved by potential. She doesn't stay for promises. She stays for presence, for consistency, for integrity. She knows what it means to give her time, her body, her energy, and she no longer offers it to those who can't meet her at the level she lives on. And it's not that she sees herself as better than anyone else. It's that she has paid the price of betraying herself one too many times. She's stayed in rooms where her soul was starving. She's loved men who couldn't even meet their own shadows. She's begged for crumbs and called it dinner. Until one day, she didn't. She chose to stop performing, to stop convincing, to stop hoping that maybe, if she loved a little louder or stayed a little longer, she'd finally be enough. She burned that story to the ground. And from the ashes, she built a life where she is no longer a passive participant. She is the architect. She is the gatekeeper. This is what he begins to understand too late. That love from a woman like her is not something you stumble into. It's something you earn. It's something you rise to meet. And when you fail to recognize it while you have it, it doesn't wait for you to catch up. It leaves. Not because it stopped caring, but because it started caring differently. You see, choosing yourself doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It doesn't mean you don't want love or intimacy or connection. It means you're no longer willing to abandon yourself for those things. It means you're no longer chasing the illusion of love at the expense of your own sanity. And when a woman reaches this place, this depth, she becomes a mirror. One that reflects truth so clearly, it makes others uncomfortable. He will regret losing you if you have this trait, because he'll realize, too late, that you were never asking to be rescued. You were offering a partnership, a shared space built on mutual growth. And while he thought he had time, thought he could come and go, thought he could half love you and still keep you, you were already watching, already deciding, already pulling your energy back into yourself. And here's what makes this regret so piercing. There's nothing he can say to reverse it. There's no grand gesture, no apology, no late-night message that can undo the truth. Because a woman who has chosen herself doesn't go back to places where she once begged to be seen. Her return is not an option. Her presence was the gift, and he used it like it was disposable. So now he sits with the echo of her absence, with the knowledge that she didn't leave because he broke her. She left because she healed, and her healing revealed just how little she was receiving in return for all that she gave. And still, she does not hate him. She does not wish him harm. She simply wants nothing more to do with a love that required her to silence herself, to shrink, to settle, because she knows now deep in her bones that being chosen is not the goal. Being aligned is, being met is, being respected is, and anything less than that is no longer enough. This is trait number 3, the ability to choose, not from fear, not from lack, but from truth, from clarity, from love for self. And when you carry this trait, you stop apologizing for your standards. You stop softening your needs. You stop explaining why you walked away. Because the people meant for you will understand without needing explanation. And the ones who don't were never truly listening. He will regret losing you if you've reached this point. Because now he understands that your love was never about him completing you. It was about building something together, side by side. And he failed to show up. So you did the only thing you could do. You stopped waiting. You chose. And that choice was your liberation. That choice was your return. That choice was the moment you became untouchable. Not because you are closed, but because you are finally whole. Regret never arrives at the moment you expect it. It shows up later, quietly, when there's no one left to apologize to. It creeps in during the silence, during the moments when the absence becomes louder than any conversation ever was. He might go on with his life. He might find someone new. He might even convince himself he made the right decision. But deep down, something lingers, something unsettles. Because once you felt the presence of a woman who embodied emotional sovereignty, who knew the power of her silence, and who chose herself with unwavering clarity, you never forget her. She doesn't haunt you with bitterness. She doesn't need to. Her peace becomes the punishment, her stillness becomes the echo, and her growth, the one you never supported, becomes the distance you can never cross again. There are no dramatic endings with women like her. No scenes. No final screams. Just a quiet exit that leaves everything rearranged. She didn't need to slam the door to make a point. She became the point. And it's only after she's gone that you start to understand that the messages she didn't send said more than the ones she ever did. That the silence she left behind wasn't cold, it was final. That the space she occupied wasn't filled by her presence, but by her essence. And that essence doesn't fade just because she's no longer within reach. You may see her one day, thriving, laughing, untouched by the chaos you once brought into her life. And it will sting, not because she wants you to hurt, but because she doesn't. Because she no longer thinks of you when she smiles. Because you are no longer a part of the story she's writing. And in that realization, everything becomes clear. You lost something rare, not because she vanished, but because she outgrew the version of herself that once tolerated less. This is what happens when a woman reclaims herself. There is no revenge. There is no war. There is only evolution. And evolution doesn't look back. So if you're wondering whether she still cares, whether she ever looks at the phone the way you do now, whether she left a space open just in case you're asking the wrong questions. Because the woman who possesses these three traits doesn't wait at doors that don't open. She walks through her own. And in that walk lies your consequence. Not because she needed to make you pay, but because she finally realized she was priceless. If you've listened this far, maybe it's because something inside you recognized yourself in these words. Maybe you've walked away quietly. Maybe you've chosen yourself in a moment when it would have been easier to stay. Or maybe, for the first time, you're beginning to understand that your power was never in being chosen, it was in choosing. If that resonates with you, take a moment. Not for anyone else, but for yourself. And if you feel called to, share it. Write, "I choose me" in the comments. Let it be a declaration, not just for you, but for every woman who still thinks she needs permission to walk away. For every woman who's afraid her silence doesn't speak loudly enough. For every woman who's learning to hold her own heart without apology. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send it to her. Not to convince her, not to fix her, but to remind her that she's not alone in her becoming. This space was made for you. Not to make noise, not to argue, but to reclaim the voice inside you that already knows. The one that whispers when you're done. The one that reminds you that choosing yourself is not the end of love, it's the beginning of something real. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. And if this touched something inside you, you already know it's because it was yours to remember all along.